collaboration is both people wading in and being, there's a difference between being assertive and being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to assert your best interests.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're relying on me to read your mind about what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
So for everybody out there, you've got to be assertive. You don't have to be an asshole when you do it. The trick is to be assertive without being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, cooperation is sometimes a little more passive.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to be collaborative. I want you to wade in. I don't want you to leave it to my mind reading to know what's best for you. And sometimes if we lean too far in the direction of cooperation, we find ourselves in a resentful position. And that's not good long term. So, I want all of you to step up and politely let people know what you need. Because otherwise you're relying on them to read your mind, and that decreases your percentage chances of success.
This is one of my favorite things that I've observed about as I'm getting to know you is you're a wordsmith. As I love the distinctions in words, and that makes a big difference. I think people have linked assertive and aggressive as the same thing, especially people who are not likely to be assertive, that they kind of miscommunicate or misinterpret it, that they need to be aggressive when really what they're trying to be is assertive. You can be assertive politely, like you just said. That's kind of that's a great thing. Really good.
I agree with you completely. One of the most assertive people on earth, somebody I'm a big fan of, Oprah Winfrey. You don't think of her as being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about her enough that I've had people close to her detail to me some very specific conversations she had with people where she was extremely assertive. If you were to boil down her message to one sentence, it would be, it's my way or the highway. Mm-hmm. But she says it in such a supportive and nurturing and loving fashion that people go, okay.
Yeah, when you say it in a way that it's like, it's okay, that if that's not your way, that's fine with me, in a way, right? That's
that's it exactly. She always says, if it's not your way, it's fine with me. And no matter what, I will always love and support you.
Yes.
You know what? That's interesting, because I have met Oprah twice, briefly the second time, but the first time I spent about 15 minutes talking with her at Maryville Resort over about 20 years ago. And she was at the resort for the first time, and my friend used to be the spa director there, and lo and behold, like, Oprah kind of walks around the corner, and she looked so tired that I couldn't even bring it to myself. I wanted to ask her if she'd do an interview, because even 25 years ago is when I first started doing interviews, but she looked so tired that I didn't bring up a single thing about business or anything. I was just talking to her about the equine experience, using like horses as this therapeutic thing that they were doing at this spa. And people were coming up to her, and she just like had to just dismiss them. But you're right, Chris. The way she did it was, extremely assertive, but also the tone of her voice, the way she did it. But there was no doubt that, don't talk to me, and that sort of thing. So it's, I think that, to master something, Chris, from like mastering the skill of negotiation here, you obviously have a book. We wanted to have you come on because certainly what you can teach people can change the trajectory of their life and the results that they get and how they interact, not just in business, but in all areas in life. What are your thoughts on mastery? You even have a master class, you have trainings. What does it take for someone to get to that level?
It's a repetition, small stakes practice for high stakes results. Be willing to make mistakes, and then learn from your mistakes. Now, that seems obvious, but first of all, most people over the age of 25 don't want to make mistakes. You're horrified, you're embarrassed, you find mistakes embarrassing. And so that's the first problem. That's a real problem. And then the second thing is then learning from the mistakes. You know, it's practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. Learn from your mistakes and be willing to get better. Like we got internally, we got sort of a game that we play on getting suite upgrades in hotels for free. It's a little bit of a contest. My son Brandon prides himself on always getting a better room in a hotel than me, and I'm paying the bills. But you know, he taught us how he does it. And the last time I was in a hotel, and I happened to be in Dallas for a football game just a couple of weeks ago, I did it badly. And I got the suite upgrade. And afterwards, as I was going through it in my mind, I was like, I made a mistake. I mean, you know, I got to do this better. But it was a learning, you know, it was a repeat experience for me. Practice. And, you know, I was willing to make a mistake. And then and relearn, get back into practice, because negotiation is a perishable skill. It's not riding a bike. If you're bragging about a negotiation that you did a long time ago, then you're out of practice, because you should have a recent victory or not quite a victory that you could talk about and get better from. So it takes practice.
So Chris, where is negotiation not utilized in life?
Yeah, you know, I don't know where it's not utilized. I mean, when are you not trying to get smarter? When are you not trying to gather information? When are you not trying to have influence in a good way? You know, again, this was with this collaborative thing that I referred to earlier about. I mean, using your powers for good and not evil. Yep. If you collaborate, if you want to hurt people, it's going to catch up with you. But, you know, if I'm only information gathering, maybe, and I don't want to have influence on the outcome, you know, maybe that's it. But yeah, negotiations involved in everything. Negotiation, one of my favorite stories is negotiation involved when you order at Starbucks. It's in everything. And the reason why it's involved at Starbucks, which most people say it's not, I had a guy tell me that a Starbucks employee told him that he gave decaf to people that were mean to him.
Sometimes you're in negotiation, you don't even know you're negotiating.
Exactly. The most dangerous negotiations are the one you don't know you're in.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. You're the recipient of what happens when you're an asshole to people, right?
Exactly.
So going back to collaboration, so let's frame it this way. So you've been in some pretty serious life or death situations. I mean, the top international FBI hostage negotiator was one of your roles that you've done in your pretty expansive life. How does someone who's threatening to blow someone's head off, wanting money or whatever, that they're looking for freedom from, you know, their crimes, how do you view that as a collaboration?
Yeah, well, you know, it sounds like a cliche, but what are their actions or their threats in a larger view? What are they designed to get? And whether or not you're a terrorist or you're a CEO or you're a paper boy, you know, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're all kind of after a few of the same things. You know, we want a better tomorrow. You know, we want to live, we want to flourish, we want to prosper. No matter what, you know, there's a higher purpose. You know, a bank robber says they need to crawl in 60 seconds or she dies, which is one of our favorite exercises. A guy wants to live. You know, a terrorist who is a demand, I'll kill this person if we don't have this political demand. They have greater aspirations. Yeah, I was training hostage negotiations in the United Arab Emirates a little over 10 years ago. They brought me in to sit down with the sheikh that was in charge. Brilliant guy, American, educated, interesting dude. I mean, an interesting dude. And they told me before I sat down with the sheikh, if they had if they had Al-Qaeda come in, the sheikh wanted to kill him. You know, he said, understand, the sheikh is not here for you to save terrorist lives. The sheikh is here for you to save lives of innocent people in the Emirates. And so the sheikh says to me, all right,
Hey.
so what are you going to teach my guys to tell? And I said to him, I want your guys to get on the phone and say to a terrorist, what you're doing is a great thing. And the Sheikh's mouth fell open. And I said, and when they do, they're going to have them the same way I've got you right now. You can't wait to hear what I'm going to say next, because there's a larger purpose to the action. So, you know, a business person, if somebody's demanding a price reduction, they're under pressure. You don't talk about the price reduction. Say, sounds like you're under a lot of pressure here. Sounds like you're really up against it. Sounds like you're backed into a corner. Get out of reacting to what they said and think about, in a bigger picture, what are they really after? And it's pretty much always the same thing, because all human beings are hardwired the same.
Yeah. So what's the most stressful negotiation you've ever been in, and how'd you deal with it?
Talking to my sister earlier today. No, you know, the ones we all struggle with, the closer somebody is to us, the harder it is for us. Because it just becomes harder and harder to get out of our own way. Any time that, if I can step back at all, then I can get myself under control. And usually the way I step back is, you know, I'll vary my tone of voice. There's a couple different ways to step back to get yourself out of a reactive, judgmental mode. Get yourself out of you know, an angry mode. You know, they say, give a speech when you're angry, it'll be the greatest speech you ever regret. Yeah. You know, when your buttons are getting punched, you're actually dumber, and you're also simultaneously more self-righteous. So it's not emotions that are bad, it's negative emotions. And anytime you can take a step back in any way, take a deep breath. I mean, you know, we're seeing all this stuff from traditional thought that now is being backed up with scientific data. Taking a deep breath is a way to step back. You know, that book Breathe is out there. Mm-hmm. I was thinking actually earlier today, you know, because I got a little heated up in conversation with my sister. But then I happened, you know, it was time for me to, I took cold shower. I take cold showers for health reasons. I instantly, my mental state changed, cool off, literally, physically. Mm. You know, so I've varied quite a bit from your original question. What was the most stressful negotiation you were in? Anytime that I don't have a sounding board, if I'm in it by myself and I don't have somebody on my side as a sounding board, then I'm not in as good a position. I've had some kidnappings that were ugly. You're not going to bat 1,000. You're just not. Anybody wants to give you a negotiation strategy that says works every time, they're lying to you. I told somebody in a conversation recently, hostage negotiators had a 93% success rate, which is an enviable success rate for any sales or business person, 93% success. But that meant we shot the bad guy 7% of the time. Mm. So engage in skills that increase your batting averages and don't expect yourself to be perfect.
Okay, got it. So what is your a process for like fleshing out a situation and then determining the best approach to take? Because you have to size things up, and sometimes you have to size them up relatively quickly. So how do you speak to that?
Yeah, all right. So the first thing is, Colin Powell said a long time ago, never let your ego get so attached to the position that if the position collapses, your ego goes with it. What does that have to do with what you just asked me? What it has to do with what you just asked me is, when you size things up initially, understand that you're going to get in more data and your assessment of the situation is going to change. So yes, initially I'm going to size the other side up for collaboration. I'm going to size them up for whether or not they're L for half. Everybody knows what that is. Mm-hmm. I mean, I live by those phrases. I probably use them every day. I'm going to try to figure out if they're L for half. Are they easy, lucrative, and fun? Or are they hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating? And then I'm going to be willing to adapt that as I go on. I'm going to use a couple of negotiation skills that are the diagnostic tools, mirrors and labels. I'm going to repeat something that they just said to get them to go on. I'm going to label what they just said. It sounds like this is important to you. Anything to give me more data as we're going through to back up whether or not they're L for half. Conversely, what am I to them? Am I the favorite or the fool? If you don't know who the fool in the game is, it's probably you. In point of fact, and I'd bet the ranch on this. 20% of everybody's opportunities, 20% of business opportunities are fake opportunities. We actually think that the number is higher than that. 20% of the time, the person is coming to you for your good or your service. They're looking for you to be a competing bid only. They're looking for you to flesh out their due diligence. They're looking for you to be the rabbit to drive the price down on the other side. 20% of the time. Why do I think the number is 20 and it's actually much higher? There's a book out there called The Challenger Sale. They ran a survey. They asked business people, how often do you actually lie to a vendor? You have no intention of doing business with them, but you're acting like you do because you need a competing bid. You're only doing due diligence. The executives responded about 20% of the time. Now, did they exaggerate or did they minimize? Because basically what they asked the executives was, how long do you lie to someone? How often do you lie to someone about whether or not you're going to do business with them? There's no way they exaggerated. They had to have minimized. So part of my assessment at the very beginning is, am I the favorite or the fool? If I'm the fool in the game, I'm going to be Oprah. I'm going to be nice and say, go away, but I'm going to say, go away.
Very good.
Soothing voice that makes anybody just go away and feel
But
good.
be nice. Always be nice. ABN, don't always be closing. Always be nice. Always be nice.
I like that.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
I got to mention this one comment. I'm going to try to see what goofball posted this because I don't see the name. It's from Windows PC. It says, I want to negotiate with my wife to accept my new girlfriend so I can be with both. Some tips, please. I would probably say a therapist for this person. Maybe an integrity class or something.
Be a little bit less self-centered. What about her needs? You're focusing on your needs. What about her needs? Maybe she wants another guy. How do you know? No, that's not the case.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's probably the case. That's awesome. Who is that, by the way? Is it someone we know? I can't even see. But I would guess without even seeing who it might be. But anyway,
I was thinking the same thing, Joe. That's funny. I think.
Yeah, we got to be thinking about the same person.
I know. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Chris. So what's the most valuable negotiation technique or strategy that you've ever learned, and why is it so valuable? Because you know a lot of them.
One of the simplest ones. All right, let's go with simplest. Mirroring, repeating the last three words of what someone just said.
The last three words?
Yeah, the last three words. Just repeat the nice job, Dean. I know what you're doing to me. I know what you're doing.
How dare you just fell for it right away without even.
How dare you? How dare you put me on me? Nice. If you can master that skill, because a lot of times you just need some time to think. Everybody says, boy, now that I'm thinking about it, I know what I wish I would have said. And now that I'm thinking about it, now I see what I missed. That mirror technique, the last three words, buys you that time in the moment without the other side realizing that's what you're doing, because they're going to go on, they're going to talk some more. They're going to add a lot in. One of the crazy things about the mirror technique is it's a preferred move of the people that possess both a high IQ and a high EQ. Now, I cannot explain why that is the case. I can speculate on it. I think if they are high in both areas, they love the simplicity of it and the lack of effort, and they're data-loving people, so they love how little they have to do to get a bunch of information out of the other side. But that's probably the single most valuable thing that you could learn, simply.
Very good. Very good. Well, so we've talked about this one before, but it's always so important because you've helped so many people just with this one. So why is the word no more important than yes? And if you could give an example.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So the key to negotiation, it's not about you. You know, we hear this all the time, but you hear no, and you go like, oh my God. Oh my God. I hate no. I hate being told no. I think we get that conditioned. Every child on earth, regardless of their language, what's the first word they learn? No. Because they get told no, and they get pointed at them, and no, don't do that. No. So we get it beat into or hardwired into us. So when we hear it, something horrible has just happened. But the flip side, the person who's saying it feels protected and safe. And they calm down and they relax. They feel like they just protected themselves. The other thing too is you can say no when you're tired and then immediately contribute to the conversation and think things through really quickly. So it's completely different. If it's about them, people love to say no. They feel, and they're gonna say a bunch more afterwards. Mm-hmm. You know, I got a couple no stories that I love, but I'll tell one of my favorites, Robert Herjavec. We're negotiating with Robert Herjavec's crew over how many tickets they're going to buy for one of our training events. I've already offered him one. His response for free. His response to the one for free was, how many can we buy? Not how many more free ones can we get? I'm a huge Robert Herjavec fan based on my interaction with him. I find him to be a generous, decent human being. So we're going back and forth, and the event is getting ready to sell out. And my son, Brandon, who runs my company, he calls me on the phone late in the day. I'm in LA. He says, you get Herjavec to commit to how many tickets they're going to buy now, or they're going to be sold out by the time the sun rises in New York tomorrow, because my son's on East Coast time. We're getting ready to sell the event out. And Brandon says, and if he doesn't buy any, I'm selling a ticket that we're supposed to be giving him for free. So I'm like, all right, I got to cut this deal. Now it's 5 o'clock in LA. When was the last time you tried to get a hard decision out of somebody at 5 o'clock? At 5:03, and also an email. At 5:03, I sent a 2-line email to Robert Herjavec. Is it a ridiculous idea for you to commit to buying 3 tickets now? Second line. Are you against paying for them before the business day starts in New York tomorrow? Again, we're 3 hours behind New York. The time stamp on his email response is 5:04, 1 minute later. Mm-hmm. No, we'll commit to the 3 tickets right now. No, it's not a problem. We'll pay for them right away. Send me a link. We'll pay for them right now within the hour. I sent him the link. We got the money at 5:23. Mm. Get people to say no. You'd be shocked at the responses you get. Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. So there's some questions that people have, but what I'm going to ask everyone, save your questions. When we open it up for Q&A, I might ask you to repost them because it's sometimes hard for me to track everything and be present here too. So Chris, how might an entrepreneur use these strategies and techniques that you teach to better understand and serve their clients?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, in simply understanding them better will help you serve them. You know, all right, so let's say you're the favorite. And let's say that they're elf, they're not half. They want you to dial into them. You know, you want to be open to a better deal, which is you tailoring your services to them so that it better serves them and it's more lucrative for you. Because first of all, I'm going to presume that everybody on this call believes the same thing that I do, that you over deliver. So first of all, if you're over delivering, you were a bargain of whatever you were charging anyway. Which means if you tailor your service, your good of service, so that it's a better delivery for them, you're worth even more. Yes, you want to get what you do. No, don't be greedy. Don't grab with both hands. But when you provide a service that's worth it, you are entitled to be paid. So the more that you listen to them and understand them, and I'm here to tell you, there are ways that you can tailor whatever you're providing that would be easier for you to provide it, which means it would be more profitable for you and it would be better for them. So be willing to engage in conversations and be open to that. And then, you know, the other crazy thing is there might be something really counterintuitive that'll make it profitable for you in unexpected ways. And one of my favorites is, you know, our mutual friend, Dan Sullivan. And he's talking about his book deal. He's talking about listening to me, never split the difference. And we pay people.
Sorry, I pushed the wrong button.
We pay people what they ask. No, I don't pound people on price. So Dan turns around and gives every dime of the book proceeds to Dan and Tucker.
Ben and
Tucker. Sorry, Ben and Tucker. And then Ben and Tucker says, Dan got the last drop of my blood. When you're not greedy on the price term, what the other side gives you back might be worth 10 times what the dollars were worth. And those guys, I think Ben and Tucker would die for Dan.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's see, the beauty of Dan too is, and I think it's one of the reasons, I mean, heck, me and Dan have done podcasts on this, is we like reciprocal people. You know, we like people that are generous. We like people that are useful. And it's just so much easier to that's what an ELF person is. People keep asking, what does ELF mean? ELF is easy, lucrative, and fun. And half is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. It's actually a term I got over 20 years ago from my friend, Mark Schneider, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. But I heard him say ELF years ago, and I said, I'm going to develop that into something, because I started thinking of all the different business methodologies you can use in terms of marketing and the stuff that me and Dean Jackson teach on I Love Marketing. It's ELF marketing. It's automated. It's robotic. But then I started thinking, how do you can filter everything through an ELF filter? What are people? What are projects? What are things that you're doing? Are they easy, lucrative, and fun, or are they hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating? Sometimes people can be hard, annoying, lucrative, and frustrating. Not all money's created equal. So ELF is a really great filter, and I'm super happy, Chris, that you're referring to that, because I think it just offers some framing. So yeah, I mean, this is once you become skilled at utilizing what Chris is teaching and what he's talking about here, you will find a lot of things in your life that were difficult become more ELF, and that's the whole goal, is to bring ELF to people in all areas of their entrepreneurial endeavors.
So I'm gonna jump in real quick, because there's one more tangent I want to go on to on half and ELF. Okay. Before you fire your half clients, and we just shifted into this recently, we got a couple of deals that were proposed to us, and they were half deals. Before we walked away, and I had this conversation with my son, Brandon, and everybody else in our company when it came up. I said, what's the counter offer that would make this an ELF deal? Before we walk, maybe they don't know that this is half. Maybe they don't understand it. Yeah. And there's a pretty good chance of the chances are that they're going to offer you a half deal because they don't know any better. They can't help themselves. There's a whole bunch of reasons. I said, let's counter with what would make this an ELF relationship. At that point, there's no doubt in anybody's mind what we're looking for. And they have the option to take it or leave it, and we have the option to take it or leave it. And we turned a couple of deals around with that by simply countering, instead of saying goodbye, so long, we said, all right, here's what would work for us. Here's what would make us want to do business with you forever and make us want 10 years from now, look back on the last 10 years and say, that was cool. Mm-hmm. And we threw it out there. And the batting average is actually pretty high on that. You know, we don't counter offer their offer term by term. We construct what would be great for us and how we would love to do business with them before we walk. And you'd be surprised at how many people will embrace that because they just didn't know any better.
Do you ever have situations, Chris, where you look outside of the scope of what will be the immediate terms that are on the negotiation to draw in other things that might tip things some way or be an influence? I was just thinking about that, how,
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I'm glad you brought that up. We're trying for that all the time. And, how do you know what you don't know? Mm-hmm. What we'll do is we'll start to say, let's brainstorm this a little bit. Like, here's some ideas that people have gotten in the past. Mm-hmm. We start to run out wacky stuff that people brought up. And that will kick their brain into gear. So, yeah, try to kick them into a collaborative brainstorming process to look for how to get outside the scope. But I mean, I love that question because that's absolutely what everybody should be doing. We will just kind of rock and roll into this, and I'll give you some background. We'll get to Q&A, and then I'll throw something at you at the end. So asked for the top 10 greatest negotiation responses. Number 1 is now bad time to talk. Now I'm gonna dig somewhat into why you want to get people to say no versus saying yes. And there's a million reasons for that also, but I will tell you an initial indicator in my view, because Dan talked before about if somebody says, hey, I want to talk to you about something that's mutually beneficial. That's an indicator, a behavior of a half, hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. Dan's come to recognize that, and it immediately turns them off. We're actually developing within my company. We've developed this. We get specific profiles of what do halves say, what's an indicator of a half, and why you should want to walk away as soon as possible. Nicely, the last impression is the lasting impression. But if you got a few minutes to talk, is one of those things. So, I mean, how long is a few minutes? When somebody said to you, have you got a few minutes to talk? When was it ever actually less than 5, which is a definition of a few, right? So it's now a bad time to talk in place of that. Why is that one of our top 10 lines? There's only one of 2 answers. And this is why Howard asked me to do a fill in a blank. So you could take notes if you wanted to write it down, because clearly if you write something down, you're more focused and you're more likely to retain it. It's an accelerator of learning. So there's only 2 answers you ever get if it's now a bad time to talk. One of them is hesitation, and they say, why no, it's never a bad time to talk. Go ahead. What do you got? When someone responds like that, you've got 1,000% of their focus, which is what you called for in the first place. Their focus, their attention, as Dan said. You got their attention. Now, keeping their attention is a secondary issue, but you've got their attention. Now, what happens when you say, have you got a few minutes to talk? Well, they think, how long is a few minutes? What do you want to talk about? When's my next appointment? That's what goes through people's minds when you say, have you got a few minutes to talk? What does that mean? You do not have their attention. You just blew the first 7 seconds by clouding their brain with those thoughts. So it's now a bad time to talk. They stop, they clear their head, and they go, no, what do you got? Or they say, yeah, it is a bad time to talk, but I can talk Tuesday at 1. Now you just got an appointment for their focus and their attention, which is what you were after in the first place. That's what we say. Oh, that's what we get over and over again. I remember seeing this come up in a thread on LinkedIn once, and somebody on LinkedIn, you know, the level of discussion in there of people clinging to their own beliefs. Someone wrote, well, I don't want to say is now a bad time to talk, because what do you do if they say yes? And my thought is, do you really want to talk to somebody who says yes to that? If they're willing to say yes, now is a bad time to talk. You want to keep talking? Think about how stupid that is. So it's now a bad time to talk. Any of you that from this point forward don't at least experiment with this, that loss is on you. I'm sorry. I'm blunt. All right. So extending. I never ask anybody if it's a good idea. We consistently ask over and over, is this a ridiculous idea? And this also will begin to get us some underpinnings of why no works. One of the reasons why no as an answer works is what we found from our own experiences. No matter how fatigued somebody is, somebody can say no and clear their mind. Every one of you listening to me right now, we all have the same problem. We suffer from decision fatigue. No matter who you are, you have a capacity for X number of decisions in a given day. You start running out of gas at some point in time. It's between the decisions that you've made, the number of clicks, every click is a decision, your circadian rhythm, what you've had to eat, what a good night's sleep you had the night before. Doesn't matter. You've all got so much gas in the tank. We see over and over and over again, and people on my staff are, especially my assistants, are told never ask Chris a how or what question after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Because if you say, what do you want to do? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to handle this? After 1, my reaction, because I'm fatigued, is going to be, I don't know, stop bothering me. Go away. Don't bother me again. Which there's a couple of, do not want to trigger that sort of response from somebody, because then my last interaction with you was you annoyed me, and the last impression is a lasting impression. So it also begins to put you on a slippery slope, if you're working for me, of a downward spiral where I don't think you're that smart, because all you did was annoy me. Now, they've all been taught, and I explicitly say this, never ask me a question ever after 1 o'clock in the afternoon where I can't say no. Because if you say, do you want me to do this? I'll say, no, do this, 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 and this. And I will, in fact, answer the question that they want to ask was, how do you want me to do it? But something about saying no triggers my ability to think through steps. First time I ran across this, Jack Welch, book signing LA. I'm standing in line of 200 people. They're doing everything they can to minimize the amount of time that you spend with a book signer for a whole variety of reasons. Not the least of which, I'm at a book signing a couple of years ago. There are 300 people in line. The people orchestrating the book signing walk up to me and they go like, from the moment somebody walks up to you to the moment they move on, you've got 30 seconds. Otherwise, we're going to be here for 6 hours. And we don't have that much time. We got to get everybody through this line, 30 seconds per person. We're going to ask them their name before they walk up to you. We'll write it on a piece of paper. They will hand you a book with their name. It's going to take you 30 seconds for you to look them in the eye, sign to Bob, nice seeing you, good luck, Chris, and they're going to move on, 30 seconds. They're doing the same thing with Jack Welch because they got to move everybody through the line. Plus, they don't want me pitching Jack Welch. They don't want me asking him over to the house. They don't want me asking him over to dinner because my wife makes a great meatloaf. All that's going to happen. They don't want pictures. So I know I get 7 seconds when I walk up to Jack Welch. I want to pitch him on coming to speak at the negotiation course I'm teaching at USC. I ain't got time to lay this out, and he doesn't have time to listen, and it's late in the day. I walk up to him, and I say, is it a ridiculous idea for you to come and speak at the negotiation course I teach at USC? And he looked at me in the eye, and he started to squint, and then he looked up into the universe, and he got this hideous scowl on his face. And he just froze. And my first thought was, I just killed Jack Welch. He got so mad because he looks furious that he had a stroke and he died and he's getting ready to fall over. So when he initially doesn't die, I'm relieved, but now he looks furious. I mean, furious. I think he's going to start screaming, security, get this guy out of here. I don't know what he's going to do. He finally unfreezes. He looks at me and he says, This is my personal assistant's name. This is a special Twitter account we have set up to communicate with her. I will call her and tell her who you are. I think we're going to be in Los Angeles in the fall. If we are, we'll come in and speak at your class. Reach out to my assistant. I'll let her know what's going on. Decision fatigue. He said no, and he thought through all the next steps, and he laid them out for me. Now, is it a ridiculous idea, and are you against the next two? Going back and forth with Robert Herjavec over him sending some people to one of our courses. I had lunch with Herjavec, generous dude, sweetheart of a guy, completely generous. He paid for lunch. It's my favorite kind of lunch. On top of that, I was at a steak restaurant, so it was even better. He paid 90 minutes, and he paid. Great guy. I look at him and I say, we got one of our in-person sessions coming up in New York. Can I give you a ticket? He looks back at me and says, how many can we buy? One more indicator of a generous, decent human being. We're going back and forth on the tickets. My son, who runs my company, he doesn't care that it's Robert Herjavec. He's mad because we're going to sell out, and he wants to sell the ticket. And he's hoping Herjavec doesn't take it so he can sell it. He's on the East Coast. We're on the West Coast in LA. Herjavec's office is in LA. I was living just up the street at the time. My son calls me at 4:30 in the afternoon, 7:30 in New York. He says, you get Herjavec on the phone and get a commitment for the tickets before the business day starts tomorrow, or I'm selling these tickets and we're going to sell out because we're on the verge of selling out now and you're holding up the whole circus. And I can't wait till the start of the business day tomorrow because the business day starts 3 hours later in LA. And by the time we get up in LA, New York's going to lunch. We're going to be out of luck. So I need a decision from Herjavec now. At 5:03 in the afternoon, I sent him a 2-line email. Is it a ridiculous idea for you to commit to 3 tickets for our course now? Second line. Are you against paying for them before the business day starts tomorrow? That's a 5:03 email. Again, decision fatigue, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. When was the last time you tried to close somebody with a hard decision after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, let alone after 5? The email response from Herjavec comes back at 5:04. No, we're willing to commit to 3 tickets right now. No, it's not a problem. My assistant will be in touch with you within the hour and we'll pay for the tickets. Tickets are paid for at 5:23. I've got all the emails timestamped. Our favorite negotiation one-liners and why. All right. Number 4, have you given up on? What's the context? This is context driven. I see a lot of people trying to manipulate me who've learned this, and they'll send me in an opening email, have you given up on doing business with us? Well, now I have, because you just tried to manipulate me with one of my tools. Now, I don't mind if you use my tools with me, but if you want to use them against me, I smell it really quickly. So any of you that want to try, have you given up on as an opening line, it's going to sound harsh. It's out of context. You deserve to have that door slammed in your face. On the other hand, it is the most effective restarter for people who are ghosting you.
I'll read. There's one from C.K. Lynn. How do we go from self-emotional awareness to better connecting with VIP prospects?
Okay. It's the same answer to connecting with anybody else.
Okay.
Okay. Did you guys just hear that?
Yeah, but I think
Does
we
it
can
matter?
keep going. Yeah, I don't know why that stopped, but keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. Read the question again. I'm sorry, I distracted myself when that came
Okay,
up.
how do we go from self-emotional awareness to better connecting with VIP prospects?
Okay, so not so much better connecting, but connecting more deeply. All right, and I know it's a nuanced difference, but there's a difference. What I would say is the value of self-awareness is that when you understand your emotions, that puts you in the prime position to be able to understand others, right? So if you can reach for understanding where they're coming from. So here's an example from empathy, all right? Empathy is the ability to understand someone from a feeling perspective, even if you haven't experienced that situation. So I've never lost a child, thank you, God. But if you're empathic towards someone who lost a child, they will feel that from you. And that will create the connection. It will deepen the connection, which is different than sympathy or feeling sorry for them. So I would go with understanding your emotions allows you to then be able to read others accurately, because your stuff is not getting in the way and you're not confusing your anger perhaps with theirs, or name any other emotion. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Schwa, a frequent caller to this program. He asked, your body tells you what emotions you have been suppressing. How do you tune into your body to reveal these suppressed emotions and deal with them more effectively?
Great question. Okay, easy. Meditation, deep breathing. Here's what's so great. And the West is finally catching up with the East. Only within the last, since the AMA came along, right? Maybe 100 years. Did you ever hear people refer to mind and body as if they're two? Right? The base of this, the base of the brain is attached to the top of the spinal cord. They're constantly going back and forth. And the mind, logic, can allow us to be in denial, to fool ourselves. The body does not lie. So if we think we're doing great and we have an ulcer, I got a news flash for you. You ain't doing as great as you think. You're just in denial. And that's just one very, very simple example. So if you get in touch with your body and you're aware of where you feel, all right. So we talked about controlling our emotions, but before we can control our emotions, what I do with clients is you actually, there's an expression when you're going through hell, what do? You keep on going. You have to actually go into the emotion, into it, just like a muscle, right? You have to go into it. You have to massage it. And then counterintuitively, it dissipates. It releases its energy. So get in touch with your body and that will help you. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Dr. Pennian. I have a comment and would love to get you to elaborate a little bit more. I noted something you said that really went to my heart. It resonated with me. Everything you said, but one in particular.
Okay.
So I'm in an educational program at Emory University in Atlanta, and there's 30 others in my cohort. They are pastors of different denominations. Okay, so it's not like 30 people from the same denomination. It's a doctor of ministry program. So we're all there, as leaders in churches. And I love it, Dr. Pennian. I love the fact that there's 30 different perspectives. You said this: listen with an ear of curiosity. You don't be attached to an outcome. And I kind of picture being in this situation with my cohort. If I went in and I wasn't listening with an ear of curiosity, wanting to get their perspective, wanting to understand more from where they're coming from, what they believe, why they believe, which I appreciate. And if I was already attached to an outcome, this experience wouldn't be nearly what it is for me, which is wonderful. But I love that. Is there any shine you want to add to that concept?
So full disclosure, Timothy and I had spoken about this in Phoenix, and we had an awesome conversation. You probably don't even remember, right? I thought it was a great conversation.
It was so good.
It was so interesting. I think the only thing I can add, and this is where religion is fascinating, because this is, now, when someone believes a truth in religion, it is a truth. But if you think about all the other ministers there, it's subjective. It's based upon your life experience and your perspective, right? So the only thing I would add to what you just said is, if you look at the exercise and the education that you're going through, as I actually have experienced what you've told me as you're seeking enlightenment.
Yeah, I like that.
And enlightenment means so much of what we're learning today is we have to unlearn so that we can learn. Right? Because if we don't unlearn, we're attached to the outcome. And enlightenment, it never means you're wrong. It just means you're growing and you're evolving. And that's why I find religion so fascinating, because who can say who's right? Let's have the debate. Let's have the conversation. It's fascinating. And people are, not only are they cognitively smart about it, they can quote Bible verse, right? But they're passionate about it. So when you marry cognitive with emotion, it's awesome. And Timothy, I have to say this, and I can't believe I didn't say this earlier, and I feel badly. That's what empathy is supposed to do. It's supposed to touch your heart. So to answer the other person's question about the deeper relationship, touch their heart. Communicate, make a connection, touch the heart. You'll know it when someone's done it.
What I'm finding is the more I learn about what others believe, their perspective, the more I understand what I believe, what my perspective is. So I like don't be attached to a particular outcome. I love that. Thank you. There's a couple more questions here from, let's see here. Ivan, Ivan's out there. Ivan said something kind of funny earlier. Ivan Gonick, are you there?
I am, Timothy.
So here's Ivan. I don't know if you know, Dean, do you know Ivan? He's actually starting an I Love Marketing
That's
meetup
what I hear. I know all
South
about
Carolina.
that. Yes.
This guy's like gonna be like the guy in South Carolina. First of all, give us a detail or two about that, Ivan. And then you wrote something earlier. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've known Joe for a few years now, and he's consistently asked me, when are you going to start your meetup where you're at? And I'm not there yet. But we're expanding offices, and we moved into a new state. And I said, all right, I got some breathing room now. Let's do it. And I'll do it here in my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina. So our first meetup is going to be January 12th at 6 p.m. So if you guys are in the South Carolina area and the upstate area and want to swing by,
I love that.
You guys.
So that's an entirely in-person meetup. Is that right, Ivan?
Correct. I'm debating webcasting it, but I want to see how the first one goes. So
yeah.
Right? In person is a smaller audience before it's out on the internet and everyone can see it.
Well, Ivan, good for you. Congratulations for taking that step. That's terrific. Now, Ivan's in our ELF coaching program, by the way.
Oh, nice. Professor,
you probably recognize Ivan. He's a very smart guy. So anyway, Ivan, did you have a question or a comment?
Oh, it's kind of a comment going back to what was being discussed. It reminds me what you were saying, Doctor, about the discussion in front of a mirror. I remember as a kid, I'd read, nonfiction books, but I'd read them out loud, and I was there. Like I could see and smell almost sometimes, and it just, just immersed in that world. And I think that as children, we have that innate ability, and I think maybe we lose it through conditioning, or maybe we'd call it deconditioning of our natural self as adults. But it kind of struck me because I was like, I remember when I was younger, I'd read a nonfiction book, and I was there. I mean, I remember reading Hardy Boys, and I literally felt like I was
right
on a boat when they were, riding a boat or something like that.
The Hardy Boy mysteries, yes. Yeah. That's funny.
That's great. That's because we're taught to devalue our emotion and to let logic and the rational reign supreme, right? So logic is supposed to rule the day, and don't be emotional. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I got 3 dogs. I'm emotional.
I would think that most people would agree that when it comes to negotiation, that all of us could have a little bit of improvement. Now, even if you are a seasoned negotiator, there are some times that you believe that you can maybe have said something a little different. So this talk is for you if you want to increase your negotiation skill sets, but also take it to the next level of how do you have deep connection in every one of your conversations. So through this 3-step approach, I'm going to be teaching you that. So before we get into this, how do we define high-stake environments? Well, it's anything that is a negotiation, a high-stake conversation or presentation. And it's also an area where we have to connect on a deeper level because we're going through maybe a challenge or a struggle. And it can also affect your time, your money, and even how you perceive your reality, so even your values. So even if you aren't in the situation where you might be fundraising hundreds of millions of dollars in your life, you're in difficult situations and conversations every single day. How many people in here are parents? Awesome. So having those deep connection conversations with your loved ones and being able to have that effect that you want. What about your spouse or intimate relationships? How many people are in those? Right? So it's slowing down, being able to get the most out of those situations so that you can get the results you're looking for. Team members and business partners, all of us, I'm assuming, even if we have that remote team member, we want to be able to connect with them, get to the heart of the matter. And then we have clients and customers and patients. How many people are connected to them? Yes, only 3 or 4, come on. And then we have also team members, and we have investors, board members, and advisors. And so looking at how we navigate those situations. And so you're probably looking at me and saying, how did she get into negotiations and sales? Where did that start? Well, it started at the kitchen table. My parents were in real estate and real estate sales for over 40 years. So growing up in a very highly entrepreneurial atmosphere, I saw the highs and I saw the lows and everything in between. And so in the early 90s, I was a teenager, and as you know, real estate, we're going through it right now, has some cycles, and we were in a deep recession, and it was a time where I got to wake up to a time in my life where I realized that if I was gonna have something in my life, I had to own my results. I had to take ownership, I had to take responsibility, and I had to make a decision. So you all in your seats right now and at home, you might be at a spot where today is that decision to make, that you want to take your relationships to the next level so that you can live the life that you want to live. And so that was a very impactful experience that led me to be in sales and to understand it on all different aspects and doing extremely well at a young age, making a lot of money and helping a lot of people and how to take things to the next level.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
So where we got to start here is negotiation strategy. And so in negotiation strategy, we have distributive and we have integrative. Distributive is that tug of war that you have, that it's maybe that one-time negotiation where you don't know if you're going to see that person again. And so it's a lot of bargaining. It's you know, cards are close to your chest. And so you're trying to get that result, but you might not see that person again. What I really focus on is integrative, which integrative is looking at long-term relationships that we all benefit, that we all win. But don't worry, Chris Voss, I'm not going to say win-win, right? So it's looking at how do we get to that deeper connection so this is an ongoing relationship that everyone benefits. So as you know, in negotiation, there's a technical side, which I could go into, which would be a 2 to 5 day intensive, where we could go into things like pre-framing, reframing, framing, to agreement frames, to anchoring, to sales cycles, all these different things. And what I'm going to do today is really focus on the artistic side, because that's something that you have a lot of control over. And it's really looking at how we have this technical and artistic side combined, which really makes it so that we are able to be authentic and have your true essence come out. So the first concept that we're going to go over is to breathe. And I love this group because we have Jason in the back right here who's done such an amazing job. I love being in groups and environments where there's so much pre-framing and people are ready to go with breathing. And what I'm going to try to do is take that breathing, how do we bring it into our high-stake environments? How do we get that artistic side with our breathing and start connecting those dots into those high-stake situations? So here's some basic takeaways is you want to elongate your breath, especially the exhale, because that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is really where we want to be in our rest and digest. So rest and digest. So we want to slow down and elongate that breath, especially the exhale. Because at the end of the day, our breath is the entry point to increase our life force energy and really have that essence that we're looking for. And as you've heard, I'm sure from Jason too, but a lot of different cultures talk about this in ancient wisdom. We have ki, mana, prana, chi, and so it's understanding that there is this thing called energy, and how does that, we have this access point of our breath and using that and to be able to slow down. And the big thing that you're looking for is to have that alignment, embodiment, and congruency. Our breath is connected to so many things. It's connected to how we look at our values, which creates our beliefs and attitudes, which creates our thoughts, emotions, actions, behavior, and our words, and how we have clarity and how we execute. So slowing down and being able to embody your breath really gives you that range of what we want to look at. So something too, looking at your breath, a part of my background experience, you're probably thinking like, okay, she's teaching us negotiation sales. Why is she slowing down and talking about meditation and breathing? And so something that happened to me over 14 years ago, as I was a corporate sales executive and I was also a competitive triathlete, I was in 2 consecutive accidents where I had to rebuild my whole entire body and relearn how to walk. And it was a crazy time. And literally, I didn't know what to do. It was one of those things, and it's something you could relate to too, when you're in a situation where the difficult things become simple, that you just don't know how to navigate. You've had these strategies your whole life and you don't know what to do. And so I wanted to contribute to some teachers that I met along the way that taught me this information. Narazi Magnolia, he was my first teacher coming out of these accidents where I could barely walk, and if it wasn't for this man, I probably wouldn't be here today. And he was a huge believer in Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga, and he even got me to live in an ashram in India where I had a lot of healing and going through my breath work. I also studied with Harada Roshi for over 10 years, doing silent meditation retreats in Japan and all over. And he taught me just the connection of our breath and how that is connected on all different levels and what we can do with it. And then I also wanted to highlight just one more person was our 2 people, Catherine Fitzmaurice and Saul, and I did voice work for 3 years because I had major PTSD after my accidents. And so what I wanted to do is just go over some basic things you want to do with your breath. So you want to speak at the top of your inhale. So when you're in high-stake environments, you want to be able to be at the top of your inhale so that you have that range with your exhale and you can be able to do a lot of different things with your voice. So it's something to practice. You want to also do a 360-degree breath. Most people do a 180-degree breath, and so you want to use your whole entire body. Your lungs are in your back, and so to be able to do that. And you want to do 4 to 7 cycles of breath cycles a minute, so something to focus on there as well. Most people do 14 to 17 breath cycles per minute. And this is all to increase in being in the present moment. So breathing, the next thing we're going to go over, the number 2 thing is listening. So remember, we have a 3-step approach, so listening. And that is really looking at the levels of listening and breaking that down. And so the levels of listening, the first level is the level 0, which is really no listening at all. It's no listening, speaking only. How many people have been that experience when you're in a conversation, you're not really even in that conversation? So it's something to slow down and look at what level are you at. Level 1 is looking at subjective listening. This is all about the listener and their agenda, and this is where 80 to 90% of people are, and this is where they're taking their reality through their filter and reacting to it. Level 2 is looking at listening and not being in the present moment. When you start slowing down and looking at the how and coming out of this to be present, a lot of times we're thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future, or something that is on our mind or what we're going to say. And so it's being able to slow down 5 minutes a day and just being present with our breath, and remember elongating, especially the exhale. Level 3 is objective active listening. So being able to objective active listen is really about problem solving. It's looking at the facts versus the story. How can we get to the solution? What is actually going on here? We can move it forward, which is great in work environments. Level 4 is looking at intuitive listening. And this is where you're taking all 5 of your senses. So that's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, and you're able to see what's happening in between the lines. Because most of the time we're in these surface structures and we want to get to the deeper structures. So being able to slow down and be able to actually like ask questions and look at how this all connected. And so within listening, we have the levels, and then it's also looking at active listening and looking at things like it seems, it sounds, what I've heard, and then asking, is that right? And with that, asking questions. So these are some of my favorite questions, just to go through this quickly and to wrap up. Questions you want to ask when you're in negotiations, because it's really about the other person and listening. So what does success look like? What are you looking for specifically? Tell me the next step in the process. Tell me how you make decisions. These are all really great questions to ask. So here's a summary of that. Take a picture. And so it's about practicing intuitive listening and elongating your breath in low-stakes situations so you can do it in high-stakes situations. And the last area I want to talk about is connection, because that really, when you're able to breathe, listen, we're all looking to have deep connection. And so deep connection starts with us being able to slow down and connecting to ourselves first. So how do we do that? How do we connect to ourselves first? And how do we look at kindness, empathy, and compassion for ourselves first? And then we're able to do for others. Because most of the things that happen is that when, in most cases, anything we do to ourselves, we do to others. So it's being able to slow down and be able to connect with ourselves first. Because at the end of the day, we're meaning-making machines, because that's what we do on unconscious levels. We're making meaning out of our experiences and events. And I'm always curious what other people are meaning and making out of their events. And so understanding meaning is how do we bring the heart and the mind together. And when we're talking to people and connecting with them, that we might be talking about something and agree on something, but it might not, it might mean something different. So how do we slow down and actually ask, what do you mean by what you're saying? Or what do you mean by this? So you can connect on those deeper structures I was talking about. And so you can move the conversation forward and actually get to the heart of the matter of what's most important. And then just really quickly, I think people know about verbal and nonverbal communication because it's such a huge component of connection. But you have physiology. We already talked about breathing and posture and being able to do conscious gesturing. You have tonality. And what I want you to take away from this is tonality. The most two important things is volume and speed. So having that range, especially when you elongate the breath, you're able to do that. And then you have your words, which is only 7%. Everyone's always surprised by this. And I know some people have seen this before. And so it's looking at predicates, which is your verbs, key words, common experiences, and content chunks. And so just to look at this all together, which is always interesting to me that 93% of communication is so nonverbal, and to slow down and really connect to all those different aspects of how we're communicating. And to wrap up, it's looking at intonation patterns. So especially when you're in big deals and you're negotiating, or you're in that difficult conversation with your spouse or your loved ones, to when you're getting to certain important parts, especially when you're closing, for instance, you really want to be aware of your pitch. So where do you naturally go upward sometimes when it's a little awkward or uncomfortable, or do you go flat or neutral or a command? So for instance, I'm working with a security company right now that is pretty high up. They're doing a lot for Ukraine, and they work a lot with the DoD and military. And so one of my CEOs and clients, we have to work on his intonation pattern of doing a command language, because military is very command-like language at the end of a sentence. So these are just some things to think about. So what you can do is in your next high stakes environment or negotiation or high stake conversation, you can breathe better, listen better, and connect better. And what I imagine for all of you is to slow down, and in that next conversation or negotiation, that maybe the last time it didn't go the best way it did, but for some reason, this time with having that right approach and thinking about these three things, everything comes into place.
According to the new thing that you've done, you have added a seventh universal principle, which is so appropriate for our theme of connection, for the theme of this Genius Network meeting. What is that seventh principle, and how does it apply to Genius Network members?
Okay, that's a good question, and it's a differentiator for the new edition as opposed to the other editions. I should just name the 6 principles and then go on to the 7th, but the principles are reciprocation. People say yes to those they owe. So if we go first with benefits, advantages, information, they give that back to us in terms of benefits and advantages in return. Liking, nobody's surprised that we prefer to say yes to those we know and like, but there are 2 very simple things we can do to highlight and enhance the rapport that people feel with us. One is to point to genuine similarities. Another is to give genuine compliments. Third principle is social proof. It's a term that we coined back in 1984 in that first edition. Now people use the term all the time, and it means that people want to follow the lead of their peers. What those around them, like them, have been doing or are doing reduces their uncertainty as to what they should do in that situation. If we can give them evidence like that, they will significantly more likely say yes to the request that accompanies that evidence. Fourth is authority. The people also want to reduce their uncertainty by following the lead of the experts in a situation. Again, if we can give them evidence that there are expert voices that are aligned with the proposal or the request that we are making of them, they will more likely say yes. Next principle is commitment and consistency. People want to be consistent with what they have already said or done. If we can show them how what we have to offer is congruent with the commitments that they've already made, especially in public, especially in front of us, we significantly, once more, increase the probabilities that they will say yes to that proposal. Scarcity is the 6th principle, the idea that people want more of those things they can have less of. And if we can honestly show them that what we have is scarce, rare, dwindling in availability to them, gives them something unique that they can't get elsewhere, they pile in to the offers that we make under those circumstances. And now we come to the 7th principle. It's what I'm calling unity. For a communicator, if as a communicator, we can arrange for people to see us as sharing membership in a group, an important group that they use to define themselves, that they use to identify who they are, all influence barriers come down to us. They just come down, right? Because inside those we groups, people trust us more. They cooperate with us more. They believe us more. And for the bottom line, they say yes to us significantly more often. They comply with our requests, proposals, and recommendations significantly more often. And this is different from similarity inside the liking principle, where if we see that we have similar tastes or preferences or style orientations to other people, that causes us to like them more, and that's successful. This isn't similarity like that. This is similarity of membership in a category, a group that we use to define ourselves. Let me give you an example from a study that was done on a college campus. Researchers took a young woman, college-age student, young woman, put her on a very heavily trafficked spot on campus and asked her to request donations for a legitimate charity from students who were passing by. And she got some results from that. She got some contributions. But she was able to more than double contributions by adding one more sentence.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
To the request, it was, I'm a student here too. I'm of you. I'm one of you. And all the barriers came down. And these college students who don't have a lot of money were 250% more likely to reach into their wallets or purses and make a contribution. Right? Let me give you a personal example of how this works, where you can identify an existing category in which you exist with somebody else, right? And simply raising that commonality to consciousness makes all the difference. A while ago, I had a project that I needed to complete by the end of the next day. I had to submit the project. And as I was reading through the final draft of my report that was going to request that the project be approved and funded, I noticed there was a section in the report that wasn't really compelling. I didn't have the evidence I needed to make that case in a convincing way. But I knew I had a colleague, let's call him Tim, it's not his real name, who did have the data like that because he had done an experiment the year before that provided that evidence. And so I sent him an email. I said, Tim, I'm going to call you in a few minutes, but I want to put you on alert that I have this need for some data that you have in your archives. I have this problem. I have this report due tomorrow. I need it today. Could you go into your archives? I'm going to ask you if you can go in, take the data out, get it into a form that I can use, and send it across to me today. So I sent that and then waited a few minutes and I called him. Now I have to tell you, Tim was renowned in my psychology department for being a sour, irascible guy, a difficult guy. This was a difficult guy. So when I called him, he answered the phone. He said, hello, Bob. I know why you're calling. And the answer is no. You say you have deadlines? I have deadlines. You say you need to have this done by the end of the day? I have things that have to be done by the end of the day. I can't just respond to every time you need something because you have poor time management skills? No, the answer is no. Before I read the research on unity, here's what I would have said to Tim. Come on, Tim. I really need this. I have this thing. It needs that the data that you have, and it also is due tomorrow. He had already said no to that. Instead, here's what I said. Come on, Tim. We've been members of the same psychology department now for 12 years. I had the information that afternoon because I reminded him of a connection that we had. I know the title of this meeting is Connection. This was a we connection. This was a connection that we used to define who we were, identify ourselves, right? And those things have massive power to move people in our direction, right? So I know we'll probably come back to this in some of your questions about how you actually do this to harness the power of unity. But I'll leave it at that at this point.
Now, I wasn't going to share a story, but I've been thinking about it all day, and I want to share it. This was one day I got an email from my boss at the time, and she said, Friday would be a very bad time for your wife to have a baby. What do you think about that? And it turned out, in fact, I mean, she wasn't expecting, otherwise that would have been an even weirder email to receive, right? Friday was her due date, and I was in the hospital with her on that Friday, and the reason that this was, she didn't want me to go to this meeting, my boss, is that this was, she wanted me to go to a client meeting. And so I'm there on the day, on Friday, with my wife, and my daughter's born, they're healthy, it's fine, this is it, right? This is what's important. But instead of being able to be focused on that, I felt torn. I'm on email, I'm trying to do both, how can I keep both sides happy, and then I remembered, no, I know all about this. I know what's important, I know what matters, and so with all the conviction I could muster, I said yes. And I went to the meeting. I remember afterwards, my boss at the time said, the client will respect you for the choice you just made. I don't know if that's true. The look on their faces not evinced that sort of confidence. But what if they had? So what? Surely I had made a fool's bargain. Surely I had allowed something non-essential to take the place of something clearly essential. And that was where I learned this simple lesson, which is if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And out of that grew a question. I mean, let me just put it to you really quickly, right? I mean, that's what I learned, right? But what about you? I want to do a quick poll. I want you to snap if any of these are true for you, right? Snap. We're going to do a quick poll. Have you ever found yourself stretched too thin at work or at home? Snap for that. I've got some people dancing at the back to this. Have you ever found yourself busy but not productive? Snap for that. All right. Have you ever found yourself saying yes just to please, or to appease, or just to avoid trouble? Right. The question is why? Right? That's a non-trivial question. Why do otherwise successful people find themselves stretched too thin at work or at home? Why? I spent years, I quit my job. That was probably a good idea, wasn't it? Quit my job, started a new company, and pursued this question with serious passion. Why is it that this happens? And this is what I found, an answer hidden in plain sight. The reason that otherwise successful people find themselves stretched too thin at work or at home is success. Yes. What's the pattern? Here's the pattern. You get focused. Right few things, right time, put a lot of energy in, generates tremendous momentum, leads to success. Good. What comes with success? New options and opportunities. That's it. That's what we want. That sounds like the right problem to have, but it does, in fact, turn out to be a problem. If it leads to what Jim Collins has called the undisciplined pursuit of more. The undisciplined pursuit of more. If you fall into that problem, and I'm exaggerating the point in order to make it, but success can become a catalyst for failure. Like Bill Gates said, success is a very poor teacher. Right, okay, so I'm not anti-success. That'd be the wrong place to have such a message, perhaps. But here's what I've learned. I've learned that you have to become successful at success. And it's a different kind of discipline. In fact, the antidote to the undisciplined pursuit of more is the disciplined pursuit of less but better. And what we've learned is that as we try to teach this to people, first of all, they just can't do it. Life is just so fast, so consuming with the non-essential. This is the culture of our times. And so we created a program, a one-year executive development program for slow growth. Because we know that's what it really takes, a process to change. There's lots of talk about mindset today, to change the mindset from everything that everyone's doing, everything popular now, to the right things at the right time for the right reasons. And let me just give you one illustration. This is a totally true story. Executive in Silicon Valley doing award-winning work, totally focused. As a result of that, his company gets purchased by a larger, more bureaucratic firm who goes into the new company. And he wants to be a good team player, a good citizen of the new regime, you know. So that means, loosely, he starts saying yes to everyone and everything without really thinking about it. If there's an email chain, he wants to be on it. A conference call, the same. You tell me what happened to his stress? Goes up. But what happens to the quality of his work? Goes down. And there you see the success paradox already at play. And he almost leaves the company in frustration. And then someone gives him some counterintuitive advice. They say, retire, enroll. Which is different than saying quit, stay, and don't tell anybody. We don't need anyone in that scenario. But he said, what if I took a different lens and I experimented with essentialism? What if I asked myself constantly, absurdly, what is essential? Eliminate what's not. Make it as effortless as possible to do the things that matter most. Well, he does this. What happens? He gets fired. He doesn't get fired. He doesn't get fired. It would just change the whole tenor of our conversation if that is what had happened to him. Now, here's what happens. He said, I got my life back. Went to dinner with his wife every night, went to the gym. He created space at work, in his work environment. In that space, he found again his creative freedom. And by the end of that year, his performance evaluations have gone up, gets one of the largest bonuses of his whole career. What do you make of such a story? Maybe it's just a trick, n equals 1, you know. Just one story that illustrates the point I wish to make. Or maybe at play is something foundational, fundamental, universally applicable like this. You can either do a few things superbly well, or you can do many things averagely well. And that basic trade-off exists everywhere, visually. You can either be pulled in a million directions, the undisciplined pursuit of more, or the alternative, to be able to get focused on the right few things at the right time for the right reasons. To figure out, for example, the priority. The priority. Do you know about this? Does anybody know the history of the word priority? Like you would. But here's the thing. The word priority came into the English language in the 1400s. It was singular. Think of it. It stayed singular for 500 years. I mean, for half a millennium, nobody in any meeting anywhere thought about pluralizing that term. And then in the 1900s, in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, somebody decided, look, why don't we just have priorities? Let's just have loads and loads of very first things that you have to do before everything else. And yet, with no sense of irony at all, have you not been in a meeting where somebody said, well, here are the 20 priorities? The idea was singular. It was a powerful idea. But to get there, to build there, it's so countercultural. It's a totally different scenario to get into that mindset. If we experiment with the idea of essentialism again and again, we can do something significant. There was a barrister in England once who might have stayed a barrister, but he had this family emergency come up. And he goes to South Africa because that's where it was. And when he goes to South Africa, he's on the train, and he gets kicked off the train because he's Indian. And it was in the middle of apartheid. He had a first-class ticket, but they still kicked him off. It was illegal. And so he takes on the South African government. He ended up staying in South Africa for 21 years. And I went recently to his house in South Africa where he was living for those years. He was successful, incidentally, there. We're talking about Mohandas Gandhi. When he goes back to India after that 21 years, he's already successful. Everybody wants a piece of him. In fact, when he arrives on the train in India, they literally are saying, run for prime minister. We want you to take on the British. And he says no. He says, I don't know what's essential yet. I don't know what it is yet. And so he doesn't spend 2 weeks in some sort of political game pretending to listen. He spends a whole year listening to India. What is the essential thing? And you know what he finds? Salt. This minuscule, but as it turns out, totally vital idea. Because the British controlled the production of salt, they controlled the production of bread and the whole food chain. And that's when he learns the idea for the salt marches. And he walks across India in civil disobedience to make salt on the beach, and 600,000 Indians follow him, and the British take note. And, he just kept on with these essentialist experiments all the way. When his grandson was beaten up in South Africa, once for being too black and once for being too white, they sent him to live with the grandfather. And for an hour a day, for a year and a half, he listened to his grandson, Aaron Gandhi, who I also interviewed. And that was the turning point of his whole life. And we know through a series of essentialist experiments that include prayer meditation, and fasting, a process that he called, in the only poem he ever wrote that I read in that house just recently, he said he called the process reducing himself to zero. What he was doing instead was being consumed with a single purpose, the priority of his life, to produce independence for the Indian people, and he achieved it. When he died, the US Secretary of State, General George C. Marshall, said of him, "Here is a man who has shown simplicity is more powerful than empires." And Einstein said of him, "Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth." We don't have to be Gandhi. I get that. But doesn't it matter that we figure out to create space to design a life around the things that really matter most to us, the essential few? Life is fast and full of opportunity, and the complication is that we've been conned into believing we have to do everything. And the impact of that is that we make a millimeter progress in a million directions. I have a position on this, that we can make a different choice, that we can learn over time through slow growth to become essentialists. And as a result of doing that, actually live a life that really matters. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I hope you found that video awesome and useful. So if you want to get a free copy of my book, I want you to click here. And if you want to watch some more videos that'll be useful and awesome, click here. Go ahead. They're over here. Do it now. Come on. Thank you. Watch them.